Part of my purpose is to say, listen, there are other options. You do not have to put your 6-month-old on a biologic immunosuppressant medication for the rest of their life. Like, who would want to do that? There are other ways to heal the body.
Kerry has been practicing medical and aesthetic dermatology for the past 23 years. Kerry believes every patient has a story, and through that story, she can put together a plan for true healing. She is here today to share her fully integrative approach and 23 plus years of experience in dermatology.
What does your skin do? It absorbs whatever you put on it. If you're using synthetic chemicals to act as a sunscreen, that is being absorbed systemically into your systemic circulation. What are those synthetic chemicals? They're toxins. Nobody needs that. I'm a real staunch advocate of.
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better. Well, actually, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Live Beyond the Norms Health and Longevity Podcast. Our next guest, Kerry Jenkins, is a certified physician assistant in Florida. She graduated from Nova Southeastern University, the home of the sharks. Actually, it said like 20,000 sharks, and my first thought was, are there really 20,000 sharks? That's the number of students. And then received her master's in physician assistant studies from the University of Nebraska. Kerry has been practicing medical and aesthetic dermatology for the past 23 years. Kerry discovered functional and integrative medicine and now has certifications from the School of Applied Functional Medicine, Root Cause Dermatology, and from the Institute for Functional Medicine. She is a speaker and has spoken at the Diversity in Dermatology Conference. Kerry believes every patient has a story, and through that story, she can put together a plan for true healing. We do have something in common. We both enjoy ballroom dancing. I don't know if we're going to have a chance to talk about that. She is here today to share her fully integrative approach and 23 plus years of experience in dermatology. Kerry, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
So many people end up in medicine or functional medicine through different routes. I want to talk about that in a second, but first I want to go a little bit further back. What was it like growing up, Kerry Jenkins? Where did you grow up? Were there any early signs that Kerry was going to be in medicine and that she would be an entrepreneur?
That is such a great question because I have a really good answer. So
That's the only reason?
Yeah. So I happen to be a South Florida native. I live in Florida, and I was born here, born in Fort Lauderdale. And, you know, us natives are hard to come by. So growing up in South Florida, you know, it was really amazing because we have really great weather all year round, right? In the summertime, it's a little bit warm, but the winters are not harsh. So we're outdoors playing. You know, back then, kids were outdoors. We played baseball and kickball in the street. We climbed trees. We had a backyard swing set. You know, I had a pet squirrel that I would feed. So a lot of outdoors growing up. My family is avid adventure enthusiasts. We did camping, a lot of canoe trips. We have property up in North Florida where we would go play in the woods. So a lot of really nice outdoor activities. And I was giggling when you asked, were there any, you know, signs showing would you potentially get into medicine? I have a very vivid memory of I have one younger sibling, a brother 5 years younger than me. And I remember in his early teens, he got a plantar's wart and it was really painful and big and it precluded him from walking. And, you know, it was just a real sore, large wart on his foot. And I remember being like, let me take a look at that thing. And I had him lay belly down on the couch with his foot in my lap. And I got a scalpel and I don't even remember what, like tweezers. And I was picking and pulling that thing out. And I remember my mom walking in and being like, what is happening in the living room? I mean, I had like a towel. There was blood involved. It was kind of a giant mess. But I had no fear going in there and just like, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do with this. So Was that foreshadowing? Maybe, because dermatology does deal with a lot of warts.
That's pretty awesome. So, one, you said your family was very adventurous and went camping. My camping family did a lot of camping. I think it was mostly because we couldn't afford the hotels, so we did a lot of KOA. We spent a lot of time at KOA. I used to have warts. It's interesting to have no fear digging into these warts. It was your brother, so that's got to, he probably caused him
He
some
was a
pain.
good sport too, because I was going in there. I was like pulling stuff out, and I have a very vivid memory of getting in there and seeing all the little ruptured capillaries, like they're little black specks in the wart. And I was like, what is this? And I just kept digging and digging. And after about half an hour, I remember him saying, let me see that. And he had a hole in the bottom of his foot the size of a dime. I just kept going. And he said, okay, that's it. We're going to take a break for now. But I think, we put some apple cider vinegar on that thing after I had gotten in there deep, and it finally, triggered his immune system to take care of it naturally. But yeah, that was my first experience.
So now that you have so much real world experience, how would you grade your first effort in dermatology?
Oh my God, it's comical. I'm really surprised that I had the insight. It's like ancient wisdom came through me, and I just started getting in there, digging and scraping and digging and scraping. And, that's how we in conventional dermatology treat warts, right? We numb it up, we cut it, and then we get in there and scrape with a curette, which is one of the dermatological instruments that we have in the office. And we scrape, and then we'll freeze, or maybe we'll burn. But I was in there. I was doing it. No fear. Go big or go home.
I've had them frozen, and I've had them electrocuted off of me at one point.
Yeah, and none of it is pleasant. It's a big ordeal.
Yeah. All right. So you started Whisper Health. What is the story behind Whisper Health? Why did you start it? Why is it called Whisper Health?
Oh, that's a great question too. So I have a little bit of a sarcastic tendency in my personality, and once I found integrative and functional medicine, it kind of made me angry. I was like, wait a minute. Practicing medicine in this way is why I went into medicine 24 years ago, right? People that go into medicine really, truly have a heart to help people. And that's what I thought I was doing when I went to PA school. I thought I was going to come out and really help treat people, cure them, and help them live a long, healthy life. And after practicing medicine for a quarter of a century, you learn really quick that that's not what medicine is. It's very unfortunate, but that's the truth. So when I started investigating integrative and functional medicine, I got really feisty, and I thought, why is this not being screamed from the rooftops? Like, people need to hear about this. They need to know about this. And the word whisper was kind of my little sarcastic, we're going to whisper health to people when I really want to stand and scream from the rooftops.
That's pretty awesome. So you kind of described that you thought medicine was a practice this way. I think I had an interview recently where they were talking about when you get into functional medicine, you're really looking, and you specifically studied root cause dermatology. You're really looking for the root cause, and I believe that at least 90% of actual traditional patients out there believe the doctors are looking for the root cause. But talk a little bit about that, because I don't think that's what's actually going on, and it is surprising. And I love the irony of a whisper, what needs to be screamed from mountaintops.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said. Like, when I went into PA school, I really thought that I was going to be taught, diagnostically how to work somebody up. And I hate to use the word fix their problem, but whatever it is that they're coming in with, it's an issue. And I thought that we would be able to solve that puzzle and figure out what it is, and then take steps to counteract whatever is driving that disease process forward. And I was very naive. I think most people are naive, going in, they're thinking that this is going to be the way to learn and be educated and to help. But once you get through your schooling and you get into the real world and start practicing medicine, you very quickly realize that, the insurance companies are dictating what you can and cannot do, what labs you can and cannot order, what medicines you can and cannot prescribe, right? Like I had no idea that my hands were going to be tied behind my back to such a substantial degree in practicing medicine. So that was a real epiphany. And then, like you said, when I found this completely different way of looking at somebody's disease state and how to identify an underlying cause, I realized, my gosh, that's what I thought I was going to be doing when I graduated school. And it just is completely the opposite. Medicine is designed to be a very lucrative business. And I may get a lot of hate and I may get a lot of pushback for saying that out loud, but it's really what it is. Healthcare is disease management. And it's broken and we need to fix it.
Yeah, I think that's true as well. So you've talked about your education as a physician's assistant. What does that look like? I think a lot of people, just, oh, that's the person who assists the doctor, but it's significantly more than that, I think. Talk about like what the education looks like related to, say, a medical doctor.
So it's interesting. In the college that I graduated, Nova Southeastern, they also have a DO program that runs parallel with the PA program. And we often took classes together. We took pharmacology together. We took anatomy and physiology, the labs together. So they combined the medical school and the PA school. A lot of the classes were taught by the same professors and the curriculum was very similar. In traditional medical school, whether it's MD or DO training, it's a 4-year program, and then they go on to do residency and if they want to specialize in internship. So with the PA program, I would say 90% of the 94 students that were in my PA class, they already had a bachelor's degree. They had a 4-year degree. A lot of them had at least 5 years of clinical experience doing something in the medical community, whether they were an LPN, an RN, a medic riding an ambulance, an ER triage nurse. They had some sort of background in medicine. For me personally, I'm a radiologic technologist. So I worked in the OR running the x-ray machines, fluoroscopy. I did diagnostic x-rays in the hospital. I worked in outpatient diagnostic centers, and I also worked with an orthopedic surgeon, and that's how I got introduced to the PA profession. Is this orthopedic surgeon I worked with had a PA, and he was running all the pre-ops, he was assisting in the OR, he was doing all these cool things, and I was like, ooh, I want to do that. So, the medical doctors and the DOs have the opportunity to have specialized intensive training with their residency and their internships. PAs, once they graduate their program, our program, when I graduated, was still a bachelor's program. Now they're all masters. So it's a 2-year program. We do a year of didactic, go year round, and then we do a year of clinical rotations. So we do all of the primary medical, like internal medicine, pediatrics, primary care, and then we get to choose elective rotations like surgical, OBGYN. I chose dermatology. So, it's a condensed version. It's a fast track. I am not by any means comparing, PA programs are definitely different than, medical doctors. We don't, pretend to be medical doctors. We work side by side with the medical physicians. But for me, I thought it would be a great way to get the training that I wanted to be able to practice medicine and still have some sort of life work balance, have a family, that sort of thing.
Which doctors don't necessarily have, right? I heard in one interview that you said you were very lucky to come out of your physician assistant studies and get directly into dermatology practice, something that you've been doing for 23 plus years. Why do you say that was lucky?
Well, I didn't know it at the time. But any PA coming out of school, getting a job in ER or primary care or internal medicine or any kind of specialty, a lot of times they have to work holidays, weekends, they take call. Their time, their office clinic hours are not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And in dermatology, there's very few emergency situations. Yes, we do take call. We do cover the hospital if something comes in. But the chance of you being called in on that weekend that you're on call is minimal. So I didn't really understand the perks that went along with it when I got offered my first job. And there's a real high demand to get into dermatology because everybody thinks, oh, it's so simple. All you're doing is popping pimples and, prescribing creams for rashes.
And scraping out warts, apparently.
And scraping out warts. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I feel like I was lucky to get that job right out of school.
So it might be fair to say that people are more interested in looking younger than actually living longer. And one of my kind of data points for this is if you do kind of Google search and look at the search terms, longevity is not nearly searched as much as anti-aging, and anti-aging tends to be looking at, like, again, how do you look younger? This is a longevity podcast. Why should our listeners be concerned about their skin when thinking about longevity and health?
Well, to make it really simple, if we think about our skin, it is the largest organ in our body, right? Our skin is the largest organ, and it has really important jobs. It takes care of our thermoregulation, our temperature regulation. But the reason I think it's one of the most important things is that it is the largest barrier that our body has. Our body has barriers. We have a blood-brain barrier. We have an intestinal lining barrier, and our skin has a barrier. So for people that have chronic skin conditions like, psoriasis, eczema, chronic hives, rashes that come and go, those people have a compromised skin barrier. And what does that really set them up for? Microbial intrusion, right? They are much more susceptible to having infections, cellulitis, erysipelas, impetigo, and we obviously don't want to have that. So taking really good care of your skin is one way to allow you to have longevity. If you have a good intact skin barrier that is doing what it needs to do, which is keeping moisture in and keeping out the bugs, the microbes, the pollutants, the toxins, things like that, you have a much better chance of living a long, healthy lifespan.
Okay. So are there any common misconceptions people have about their skin health?
Common misconceptions. I mean, I think as young people, and I can definitely attest to this being a young person quite a few years ago, I'll speak for myself personally. As a young person, I was very outdoors all the time. I was in the sun constantly. I grew up at the beach. And sunscreen really wasn't a topic of conversation when I was growing up. My mom never said, put on your sunscreen, you're going to the beach, protect your skin. That was never said. So I did have my fair share of sunburns, but I think really the misconception that a lot of the youth have is, oh, I'm not going to get skin cancer. I don't have to worry about wrinkles. That's so far in the future, right? A lot of people just don't think about taking care of their skin so that they can age gracefully, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So pushing it off and we'll get it. I definitely want to get into like sunscreen because that's certainly a huge debate in, I don't know, biohacking world, maybe all sorts of worlds. But let's stay focused on what are the top 5 pathologies or skin conditions dermatologists tend to deal with?
So I would say acne rosacea, those inflammatory skin processes where people are having breakouts. Eczema and psoriasis are just coming out of the woodwork. Like the amount of children that are being diagnosed with atopic dermatitis, which is eczema, is it's unbelievable how many more kids are being diagnosed, and it's not mild process. This is severe process that these kids have. And then I would say the other thing that we see the most common is the acute contact dermatitis, the irritant rashes, the contact dermatitis, where somebody has had an exposure to something and boom, they're in a full body rash. They can't sleep at night. They're itching like they have fleas, and they're just pretty miserable. So between the acne, rosacea, eczema, psoriasis, and then the acute skin rashes, those are the most common things that we see. And then the other piece of it is doing the full body skincare checks to assess for cancerous lesions, to look for melanoma, squamous cell, basal cells, things like that.
So let's throw in any ideas? You're talking about like this increase in eczema, psoriasis. Any ideas on what's driving this? Is this just is our population changing? Is our sad American diet having some impact?
Ding, ding, ding. So the SAD diet, the standard American diet, has drastically reduced the nutritional content of what we're eating. You know, the fast food, the processed foods, the junk foods, that is the majority of what a lot of young kids are eating day over day, week over week, month over month. And the nutritional value that they're missing out on is substantial. So you have to think about the body as a very intelligent organism, and it's always trying to do the best it can with what it's provided with, right? Garbage in means garbage out. The body cannot restore, repair, keep good immune system if you're not feeding it whole, rich, nutrient dense foods. So the standard American diet is one really, really, really large reason why people, you know, the eczema, the chronic eczema and is coming up. We're having so much more of it. And then the other side of that coin is the environmental toxicants that are in our everyday life. We'll talk a lot about this, I'm sure, in more detail, but pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all on our food, the forever chemicals that are in the environment that aren't going anywhere for the next 100 years. They just keep recirculating from the air to the water, you know, that whole cycle. The microplastics, the phthalates, the parabens, the, you know, Teflon that we're cooking our food in, all of these things are toxic to our body. So our toxic load, if you look at the toxic load from our ancestors, say my grandparents, their total toxic load is so much less than what our toxic load is in today's culture and society. I mean, I have read a recent article that's saying, you know, a newborn, a baby that was just born has something like 87 chemicals found in that cord blood. Wow. You know, it's no wonder we are finding so much more autoimmune disease, so much more cancer, so much more of these chronic diseases, allergies, food sensitivities, eczema. It's just the environment we're living in.
So as you think about, it would be very nice to have skin be kind of an early indicator. I think it may not be the case, but any ideas on, as you're getting into functional medicine, you know, are there low-grade psoriasis before there's kind of more internal autoimmune diseases, or do you just see like people come to you now as a functional practitioner and they don't necessarily have any challenges with their skin? It's internal. It certainly would be nice. You're like, oh, you have this problem because I can see it. Anything along those lines?
Yeah, so it's really, really interesting. The people that come to find me as an integrative and functional dermatology professional, most of them have some manifestation on their skin, some rash, something that is chronic and not going away. And they've been to their primary care, they've been to their internal medicine, the internal medicine has punted them to the dermatologist, or if it's a young child, they start with their pediatrician and then the pediatrician punts to the dermatologist. And when they go to the dermatologist, they are offered steroids and maybe a non-steroidal type of immune modulating medication to try to lower inflammation topically, to apply topically. And then if that doesn't work after the first visit, then they're immediately starting to be counseled on biologic drugs. And these biologic drugs, you know, I don't have any problem with them. They really, really work. And in some people and in some instances, circumstances, those biologic drugs are needed because the whole system is so dysregulated that we need something to just put the fire out, right? But most of the people that find me they've been to the primary care, they've been to the pediatrician, they've been to the dermatologist, and they don't want to put their 6-month-old on a biologic drug that they have to inject once a month. And they come to me and they say, there has to be something else. What other options are there? So those are the people that are finding me. And I feel like part of my purpose, and I'm so grateful to people like you who have people like me on shows, is part of my purpose is to say, listen, there are other options. You do not have to put your 6-month-old on a biologic immunosuppressant medication for the rest of their life. Like, who would want to do that? Now, I'm not saying doing that is wrong. There's a time and a place for that. But I feel like my purpose is to let people know there are other ways to heal the body. And, just having conversations like this is allowing us to get the word out to the general population.
Yeah, so biologic, they tend to be immune suppressors. I would imagine, does that cause other immune challenges, like more likely to get a cold, more likely to get a flu, or warts even, because you need an immune system to prevent warts. What are some of those, or one of those that pops to your mind that they tend to want to put people on?
Dupixent is the number one, medication that these young, I mean, they got their indication for as young as 6 months old. So I have some people, some parents, moms come to me and say, I saw the dermatologist once, and on the first visit, they said, we're not messing with anything else. Your child needs to start Dupixent. And listen, these biologic medications are very smart. They're going after specific arms of the immune system, right? And that's how they work. But I mean, like if you turn on the evening news while you're preparing your dinner and you just listen to the television ads, may cause death, may cause pneumonia, or, leukemia, lymphoma. It may cause, intractable nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. If you get the common cold, you may pass away. Like if you listen to they talk really fast at the end of those commercials, they're telling you what you need to be aware of when you're on those medications. And it's no joke. It's suppressing the immune system. So you have to understand, your immune system is a very intricate, very highly balanced process. If you squash one arm of the immune system, your body's like, what the heck, man? I'm only trying to do what I can to help you survive. There's going to be another something that goes out of whack because you're forcing the system to do something that you think is good. It doesn't work out that way for a lot of people.
So one of the things you said, that looking at kind of the potential skin challenges that we can have is, the standard American diet is so low in nutrition. Are there a couple of nutrients that you're kind of will help skin, real quick? Like, what are some that you would say, hey, we all might want to be considering this, hey, maybe somebody's listening to it and they have a little bit of rosacea and you're like, hey, try this because like it can't hurt. It's a good supplement. What would you throw out there?
So first and foremost, nutrient deficiencies are huge in our kids, in our adults, in the general population. And I was absolutely flabbergasted to learn that a lot of pediatricians and a lot of primaries are no longer testing vitamin D levels because the insurance companies no longer want to pay for that test. So if we're not measuring something, then we have no idea how deficient we potentially could be. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. It is an actual hormone. It is an immune modulating nutrient. Vitamin D is imperative at balancing the immune system and keeping skin healthy. Vitamin D is converted in our skin. We get UV rays on our skin, and our skin has chemical processes that create vitamin D in our body. So vitamin D is a nutrient that most people need to be supplementing unless they live near the equator and they are physically outdoors 5 out of every 7 days and getting 20 minutes of sun on their body. They're not manufacturing enough vitamin D. So I would say vitamin D is crucial. The other fat soluble vitamin that doesn't get a lot of press is vitamin A. So the beta carotenes, I always tell my people I would always prefer to use food as medicine wherever possible. So those beta carotene, how can I get more vitamin A in my diet? Well, you can eat orange and yellow foods. Those richly yellow and orange pigmented foods are going to contain a lot of beta carotene. So sweet potatoes, pumpkins, squashes, red peppers, orange peppers, yellow peppers, radishes, anything that has that bright pigment to it is going to help increase your vitamin A level. And the other nutrient that I would say most people are deficient in and nobody is testing for is zinc. So zinc is an integral part in keeping our immune system regulated and able to do what it needs to do. And it's also really important for skin health. There's a lot of people that will notice white spots on the bed of their fingernails. That's a zinc deficiency. So there's so much, we're not eating the plants and we're not taking in the amount of fiber that our ancestors used to eat in their regular diet. But even, when we are eating produce that's grown in the ground, because we're not rotating crops, our ancestors used to pasture the animals, right? So if you grew a crop, you would harvest that crop and then you would put the animals out to pasture on that crop to do what? To re-mineralize the soil, to get that soil, give that soil a break, and to repopulate that soil with the good organisms and get the minerals back into the soil. So they would rest that plot of land and grow on a different plot of land. And then once they harvest on the different plot, then the animals are pastured on that. And then they'd come back to this one. And we don't do that anymore. So between soil erosion and the frank depletion of nutrients in the soil, the plants that we are eating are much less nutrient dense now than they were even 25 years ago. So, mineral depletion is a real big concern.
So where would you get zinc, right? If you're recommending it from diet as much as possible, is there zinc and maybe even vitamin D? Because obviously you can supplement with it, but if we can get it naturally, better.
Yeah, so with the vitamin D, I just tell people to get, 15 minutes of sun on their chest, their shoulders, their back. You don't have to get it on your face. You can wear a baseball cap and protect your face, but, get your arms and legs in the sun 15 minutes most days of the week. If you live up north in the northern hemisphere, you need to supplement with vitamin D. You're not going to be able to get enough from the months of October through April to sustain a high enough level to be optimal with vitamin D. So the people living up north, you just need a vitamin D3 with K2 supplement every single day. The way to get zinc is pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds I always have my people make a homemade trail mix with pumpkin seeds, almonds, that's high in zinc. I think oysters are really high in zinc, although that's a much harder sell. But the pumpkin seeds are really easy to get into the diet.
Excellent. How often do you think we should be visiting a dermatologist?
Well, I think the answer to that is it depends. If you are of a skin coloring like you, Chris, you have light skin, light hair, and light eyes. People like you, if you have grown up somewhere that does have a lot of sun exposure and you did lead an active outdoor lifestyle where you had a lot of sun as a young person, I think people with more fair complexions need to be checked regularly every 6 months. People like me, I'm much more olive. I have brown eyes. I tan instead of burn. They still need to be checked, but ideally, I think every 6 months, if you have a family history of skin cancer, you definitely want to be looked at. I mean, I was 32 years old when I found my first, and I didn't even find it. My girlfriend found a skin cancer on my back. I never would have known it was there. So, growing up in South Florida, living on the beach, I had my first basal cell at 32 years old.
Wow. And how about darker complexion, like so African Americans that might be listening, like what does that look like?
Yeah, they definitely need to be looked at. That is a misconception that African American people are not going to develop non-melanoma skin cancers. They can develop melanoma and non-melanoma in areas, just like Caucasians can. So we do want them to be aware of moles, any dyspigmentation, any changes in any moles or birthmarks that they may have, because they can get skin cancer just the same.
So about 12 months, like once every 12 months as well, or can they get away with a little bit longer time frame?
I would say yearly. I would want yearly. You want somebody to take a look at your back. You can't see your back really well, right? You want somebody to take a look in areas that you can't visualize every single day, the back of your legs, your backside, the top of your shoulders and the back. You need that to be looked at annually at minimum.
And in your kind of functional dermatology practice, do you do those scans, or is that something more to send to a dermatologist, and then you're kind of dealing with more of the chronic stuff? Correct.
I'm dealing with the stable chronic rashes that won't go away, psoriasis, lupus, the autoimmune conditions. I have them have a dermatology provider that can do their annual skin exams.
Okay, makes perfect sense.
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Hopefully you're loving it. This is a way you can support the podcast and take advantage of a great offer. We're offering 50% off of one of our MCT bottles. MCT is an amazing oil. Add the ESS60 molecule to it. It's even more amazing. All you got to do is leave a review on iTunes, send us a notification that you've left that review. We'll get you a coupon code that'll get you 50% off of our MCT oil and free shipping. Back to the podcast.
With functional medicine now in play, why do you think it is important to have a choice on how you treat these chronic skin conditions?
I think it's really important, especially for the pediatric population. I think it's important to get the word out to the parents that just because the only option that your dermatology provider gave you was a biologic medication, that doesn't mean that's your only option. I think it's really important for people to understand that your body wants to maintain homeostasis. It wants to stay in balance. It's not trying to fight against you and make your life miserable. If you have a head to toe skin rash and your baby is not sleeping at night because he's scratching consistently to the point where his skin is bleeding, that is a signal that something is very, very disrupted within the body, right? So I just want parents, especially parents of little ones, but for every single person, just because you go to the derm and they say Dupixent is all we can do for you, you don't have to settle and say, okay, that's all there is. There are other options. There are, the awareness is starting to grow. People are becoming more aware of integrative and functional medicine. And, we're out here preaching, we're screaming from the rooftops that lifestyle matters, right? Your nutrition matters. How much you move your body every day matters. How you manage your stress matters, and how much and how well you sleep matters. Those are the 4 pillars of health. If we can go back to basics and dial those 4 pillars of health in, oh my God, we clear skin all day long doing basic things. It's not sexy. It's not fancy. It's basic, really, what your ancestors used to do to take care of themselves, but it makes a big difference.
Do you see, is yours a practice see a lot of pediatrics? Is that's the impression that I have, maybe not the actual case?
I do see a lot of pediatrics. The youngest pediatric patient in my practice right now, I think is 4 months old. And We're talking head to toe eczema. Like the family is not sleeping at night. There's no sleep to be had in the entire household because the infant is not sleeping. If the infant's not sleeping, mom's not sleeping. If mom's not sleeping, dad's, it's catastrophic in the entire household. Yeah.
Wow. So I have to ask this question. So I have 14-year-old twins. One of the questions is, my daughter had acne and she went on, and I can't remember the medication. It was a short time frame that fixes acne permanently, which in my mind what was that?
Isotretinoin. The brand name is Accutane.
Accutane. Yeah, that's okay. So we did it, but part of me was like, wait a minute. So I'm going to take one thing and fix all acne for the rest of your life? I'm not like, what's your opinion? Because and I'm done. And if your opinion was that it was a bad idea, I'm okay with that. Like it's already done. But it just seems not healthy, right? To be able to take something for some period of time and then you just never have to deal with it again. Although vaccines are like that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on Accutane?
So I have a lot of patients, teenage patients that come to me that say, we went to the dermatologist and they said isotretinoin or Accutane is your only option. And the parents are like, nope, we're not doing that. I did that as a child and this is what happened to me. And I'm convinced it was because of the isotretinoin. So again, isotretinoin is a very strong medication. It's working on the oil glands. It's shutting off the oil production in the skin, which ultimately affects the bacterial composition on the skin microbiome. And that's how it lessens the acne. So there's no question that it works and it works well. But when your 14-year-old daughter did it, did she have to have a pregnancy test every month?
She did, yes.
Did she have to go for routine blood work to look at liver enzymes every month?
No.
Okay. That's surprising. We're monitoring.
Not that I know of, right? So certainly I was involved maybe in 2 of a number of appointments, but certainly there were pregnancy tests. I'm not sure about the blood work and liver enzymes.
Yep. Typically there's blood work every single month. You're doing blood work every month and you're getting a negative pregnancy test every month. Yep. And why is that so important? Because isotretinoin is fetal toxic. Like, it causes birth defects. So that's why there is now a separate, the government has created iPledge, which is an entire institution completely dedicated to managing patients that are taking isotretinoin. Because if a female happens to get pregnant on that medication, birth defects are almost always going to be there. That's how strong the medication is. So that's why when you put a female patient on isotretinoin, you have to have 2 forms of birth control, and abstinence does not count. There has to be 2 forms of birth control present. And they do a pregnancy test every single month because it is carcinogenic to a fetus. And the reason we're doing blood work every month is because we're monitoring liver enzymes to make sure that liver enzymes are not elevating. It is a very toxic medication, and it's hard for the body to process. So we want to measure kidney function, liver function, complete blood count, make sure nothing's going sideways while the patient's on the medication. So, it works, but again, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a little bit, there is something called the gut-skin connection, okay? If you have inflammation on the skin, and acne is just an inflammatory process. Blemishes and pimples are inflammatory pus pockets on the skin, right? Eczema is inflammation on the skin because the skin barrier is broken. Psoriasis, the same type of thing. So if the inside, the gut, is on fire, it's going to manifest on the skin. So the way I treat patients with acne is completely different than the way conventional dermatology does it.
Well, and I would imagine you would correct the diet, and I am constantly talking to my daughter about making good decisions, and she struggles to make good decisions, to stay away from sweets and whatever. I think it is slowly working, but we're 14 years in, and she's really had a sweet tooth since she was super young. Like, it was very obvious this was going to be a challenge very early on. But it's just constantly like, what's your protein? Have you eaten good protein with this meal? Focus on the protein.
So important. And you know what? Congratulations to you for having the conversations, because so many people just don't have the awareness to have those conversations with their kids. Like, my kids have grown up eating Brussels sprouts and all kinds of weird vegetables. And I'm not going to lie, it was not easy at first, right? It took time to continuously introduce foods to them, but they're to the point now where they're like, Mom, you know what? I'd really like you to make a fabulous salad with blueberries and nuts and seeds and all kinds of, exotic things in it, because they crave the greens. They crave those vegetables. But most people don't understand the importance of the macros, the proteins, the healthy fats. Healthy fats are imperative to having a healthy skin, healthy skin barrier. But again, the standard American diet is fast food, processed food, food dyes, food colorings, preservatives, and all of that is just garbage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm working on that, and also working. I probably need to have my wife listen to this podcast to support me a little bit more. Yeah, we live fast, busy lives, and my wife included. She owns a spa, and so you sometimes go for the simple things, and yeah, it's not necessarily good. It's funny you said Brussels sprouts as a weird food. I don't remember growing up with Brussels sprouts like at restaurants or whatever. They finally figured out how to cook them, but I think all they figured out to do was to put them in honey and fry them, and they're delicious. If you put almost anything in honey and fry it, it will be delicious. So that's not maybe. I mean, you're certainly getting more minerals and kind of vitamins, but it's adding some sugar and fried stuff. We talked a little bit about gut health and skin health. There is a debate in the biohacking community about sunscreen. Why is there so much debate, and where do you sit on this debate?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what has come out. I personally only recommend mineral SPF to my patients. I am not an advocate of the chemical sunscreens. I mean, first of all, the words are this long. Can anybody even pronounce them? No. If you cannot pronounce what's on the label of your product, stay away from it. All right. It is a synthetic chemical. And again, we're going to talk about the skin as being the largest organ in your body. What does your skin do? It absorbs whatever you put on it. If you're using synthetic chemicals to act as a sunscreen, that is being absorbed systemically into your systemic circulation. What are those synthetic chemicals? They're toxins. Nobody needs that. So I'm a real staunch advocate of zinc oxide and titanium dioxide for sun protection. If you are going to be outdoors, those mineral sunscreens, they're going to last longer. They're going to be much more of a block for UVA, UVB rays instead of a screen. The chemicals are reacting as, like the UVA comes and bounces back off that chemical. Zinc and titanium are actually blocking the radiation, those damaging rays coming into the skin. So I'm a sincere advocate for the micronized zinc, the micronized titanium. I think a lot of the controversy is coming from these nano particles of these minerals. So these nano zinc particles, a nanometer is a billionth of a meter. Like that is really, really tiny. So again, if the skin is absorbing whatever you're putting on it, that nanoparticle, the reason they created these nanoparticles is to reduce that white sheen on the skin because it's not attractive, right? So they micronized the zinc to see if they could get better absorption on the skin and not have that white Beetlejuice look. But the question that comes in is how much of that is being systemically absorbed, and are there toxic side effects from the absorption of those minerals? Are you inhaling those nano microparticles? And if you're inhaling them, they're getting into systemic circulation through your airways. And what are the potential toxic side effects from that? So those types of questions haven't really been answered. And I think that's where all the debate's coming from.
Well, I think so. In terms of the minerals, right? This is my impression. The biohacking community is like, yes, let's use these minerals, and in that sphere, there isn't much of a debate. Although I'll touch on something that did come up in a conversation with a hair restoration expert. The debate is about these, long named things, and you should just avoid them, and better to be in the sun without them, which is an interesting debate, right? Is it like if you don't have any mineral stuff, would you, and you knew you were going to be on the beach all day, would you go ahead and use those potentially, potentially toxic? I mean, they've got toxins in them, we can say that, or endocrine disruptors. I think that's one of the big concerns. So that's a good question for you. Like, you're on the beach, you're going to be there all day. There's no mineral because you're in the middle of, some part of America that doesn't have minerals. Do you use these sunscreens that people say don't use for that day, or do you not?
Me personally, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
wear a long
Stay in the
sleeve
shade.
white
Yep.
t-shirt.
Yeah. The best sun protection is actually clothes. And then I am aware, and I'm glad you brought it up, because micronized, great. The nano, Dr. Alan Bowman, he's a hair restoration expert, and he was talking about how women are now actually, it's going into pores and killing hair follicles. Right, which is not what any woman wants, also not what most men want, or almost any man. So stay away from the nano minerals, because those actually are doing damage to hair follicles. Other than that, maybe you could use them somewhere else, or maybe if you wanted to get rid of hair follicles on your legs or whatever, that might be an option. I think in general, stay away from those. What are sunspots? Like, what are they, and how do we prevent them, and can we get rid of them after we have them?
So solar lentigines, which is the very professional name for a sunspot or a freckle, is a manifestation of pigmentation that comes up to the surface of the skin over time. Okay. So if you have a sunspot on your cheek, quite interestingly, when you look at people that have substantial sun damage, look at the left side of their face. Most people have more sun damage on the left side of their face. Why is that? Driving, coming through that window, right? So if you do have a solar lentigine on the surface of your skin, you have to understand that the damage and the pigmentation, the damage that was done was a long time ago, and it has taken years to come up through the dermis and then finally manifest on the epidermis, which is that top layer of skin. So it's basically just sun damage. That's all that it is. It's sun damage to the melanocyte, which is the pigmenting producing cell, and that solar lentigine slowly migrates to the surface of the epidermis. Is there a way to get rid of it? We do a lot of cosmetic. Your wife in the spa may have an IPL type of laser or a BBL type of laser, and that's going to target the melanin in the skin. That light is then absorbed by those melanocytes. That spot gets very dark, and over a period of about 5 to 7 days, it will flake off. So yes, there are things that you can do in the aesthetic world to target those brown spots. Insurance isn't going to cover it. It's going to be completely out of pocket. You need to plan for it on your social calendar. You don't want to have any speaking engagements because you might look like, Pippi Longstocking with all these little spots, but it's a relatively easy treatment to do. It's quick, it's affordable, and for the most part, people get really nice results with it.
How about derma rolling? Is that something, or you don't even have to roll, like any sort of derma, I know
Microneedling.
you're damaging the skin. Microneedling, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that working so much for spots like sunspots or sun damage. If you're poking the skin, microneedling, even microdermabrasion, what you're doing is you're trying to get those collagen, elastin, fibrinogen cells to reproduce. You're stimulating them mechanically. You're trying to get them to reproduce. Those are nice treatments, but they're not really going to address pigmentation issues.
Okay. What are your thoughts on, so social media has a big influence, and I was actually going to tie this, and let me go back to this, right? So you're dealing with a lot of pediatrics. Do you struggle with, and maybe you don't, right? Because you're kind of addressing diet, you're trying to address movement. Are tablets in the way of some of these things? Like, did you ever kind of get parents pushing back, or like, there's no way I'm going to get them to go outside, or what are you seeing in your practice?
Yeah, so the blue light from screens is massively messing up circadian rhythms, especially in kids. If kids are sitting on a tablet or on a device, a laptop all day long, that is drastically affecting the pineal gland deep inside the brain, which is the master clock that runs your circadian rhythm. So I always have discussions about that with parents. But the truth is kids need to be outside. They need to be in the dirt. They need to be on a playground. They need to be running around and moving their bodies and expending that energy. We have such a crisis, a mental health crisis in these young people today. They're all diagnosed ADD, ADHD. They're all on medication. Well, why is that? Because they're not allowed to go outside and run. Let them go outside and play and be a kid. It's really, really, really important. Getting their hands dirty, playing in the dirt, making mud pies, playing in a sandbox. All of those microbes and those organisms that they're being exposed to when they're doing that is training their immune system, right? And that's really, really important in the general scheme of things. Like, your immune system needs to be primed. It needs to be exposed to hundreds of thousands of organisms so that it doesn't go crazy later on in life. It's another reason why pets are really important. It's okay. Let the dog slobber all over the kid's cheek. It's, informing and training their immune system. It's all good.
Yeah, they say the gut biome of people with dog, I think dogs specifically, I'm not sure about cats, but dogs specifically, is significantly more diverse than people without dogs.
Yes.
Which is both disgusting and healthy.
Correct.
All right, so again, social media, and I actually ended up ordering something, I wish I knew what it was, to lighten some age spots. One, what do you think about social media and the potential negative impact as it comes to like skincare? And then two, any way to kind of weed through like where do we get the credibility? How do we separate the myths and marketing from actual potential benefits?
It's hard. I'm not even going to try to say that it's easy. I really encourage people to do their homework. Social media is an out of control, anybody can be an expert on anything. And just because you have 870,000 followers does not mean that you're an expert on skincare or products. So just because somebody's popular and has a lot of followers and they're promoting a product does not mean that it's legit, that it works, that it's good for you. You really, really need to do your due diligence and, it's unfortunate but true. A lot of times you get what you pay for as far as products go. So if you have a desire to, maybe purchase something, go to your dermatology professional and say, hey, listen, I follow this person on TikTok. This is what they recommend. What are your thoughts about that? And they'll be able to tell you in 30 seconds, it's trash. Don't waste your money. Or listen, we have a better option here. A lot of practitioners are sold products that are only sold, they're practitioner level products. Like whatever you're going to get from your dermatologist, or if they write you a prescription to a compounding pharmacy, that product is going to work. The stuff that people are pushing on social media, God only knows what's in it.
Absolutely. Earlier you mentioned that sometimes there are labs that you can order, and labs that a typical practitioner, traditional practitioner cannot. Are there labs that you tend to focus? Do you order many labs, and are there some labs that you're like, this is something that your practitioner wouldn't order, and what are those, and why do you tend to order those?
Yeah, absolutely. So any person that I work with that has chronic skin disease, whether it's an infant or an adult, I always give the parent the option to do basic blood work. If it's an infant, I'm obviously not sticking a 4-month-old and getting a phlebotomy draw. But if it's a 7-year-old, we may consider doing that. So I'm always testing vitamin D. I'm looking at vitamin A levels. Those are our fat-soluble vitamins. I'm always testing zinc because 8 times out of 10, people are subclinically deficient in zinc. It doesn't mean they have to be lab low on their lab, but that subclinical deficiency is not allowing their body to work optimally. And if we want healthy, clear skin, we need optimal nutrition to give optimal building blocks for our body to be able to do what it wants to do. So I measure zinc, vitamin D, vitamin A. I do a complete blood count to make sure there's no, raging anemia. And I do a metabolic panel to take a look at kidney and liver function. So I offer those basic labs to everybody. Infants and children, I don't require it. If the parent wants to do it, great, it's more data. If not, no problem. But adults and older kids, I always get those basic labs. And then the other thing that I do that I find so much value in is going to be a little bit outside of the conventional range. It's actually a comprehensive diagnostic stool analysis. So again, it's a little bit disgusting. I tell my patients that you're going to poop in a French fry boat and we're going to send it off as a science fair project. And the people at the lab are going to analyze that stool specimen. And the amount of information that I can get from that stool analysis it's unbelievable. It lets me know how well their digestive function is happening. How's their gallbladder doing? How's their pancreas doing? It shows me if there's any obvious worms, parasites, amoebas, protozoa, yeast overgrowth in that gut microbiome. That's really important information. It shows me if there's any overgrowth, dysbiosis like H. pylori in the gut. There's a lot of bacteria that can overgrow like Klebsiella and Citrobacter that can cause substantial damage inside the gut microbiome and in the gut lining. And if those organisms are overgrown, now it's a totally different ballgame, right? We have intestinal permeability. Things are seeping through the gut, getting into systemic circulation, tripping off the immune system. Now we have global inflammation. Hello, body rash, right? So, between looking at the gut microbiome, it shows me how much inflammation is inside the gut, the digestive function I mentioned, the immune system. It tells me how the immune system is functioning in the gut. All of this information together with the blood draw really allows me to have a very clear picture of what's going on inside that intestinal tract. And really, when I'm healing skin, I do it by working on the gut. We rebalance those gut microbes. We close those tight junctions and create a barrier. Again, skin barrier, gastrointestinal barrier. It's there for a reason, right? So we work on healing that gut lining, preventing things from leaking into systemic circulation. If we have overgrowth of yeast, where, you were just talking about your daughter having an incredible sweet tooth. What's driving that? Yeast. Yeast loves sugar. Yeast loves simple carbohydrates. So many people are over-colonized with yeast in their gastrointestinal system, and that's why they're craving all the sweets and the treats. So rebalancing that gut, giving it the nutrition that it needs, the amino acids, the macros, the protein, the healthy fats, the complex carbohydrates, the fiber, That's how I clear the skin. So between the blood work and that comprehensive digestive stool analysis gives me tremendous information for which to create an individualized, patient-centered plan on how we're going to cure your process.
So understanding their story and then turning that story into a healing path. Excellent. Did I miss anything? I have a couple wrap-up questions, but was there anything that you wanted to share? You talked about your practice. Oh, do you see patients across the country, across the world, or are you limited to your particular area?
I'm limited to my particular area. I am licensed in the state of Florida and Georgia, so I can see anybody via telehealth in those two states. I'm working on getting additional state licensure. It's, a financial obligation, and it's a lot to fill out all the paperwork, but we just got licensed in Georgia, so we're happy about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so here are our wrap-up questions. Do you have a target age that you want to live to?
Oh, goodness. So I saw this and I thought, I really don't know how to answer this. So I really don't. My whole goal personally is I want the quality of my years to matter. Like, people can live to be 103, but if they're cognitively gone and drooling in bed, that is not quality of life. So for me, I want to have as many quality years as I possibly can. And what does that look like? Well, for each person, it's individual, right? I want to be able to go hiking and, to visit the places that I love and just be active into my mature years that are starting to come. So yeah, I don't have a number. I just want those years to be full of vitality.
So I'm going to push you a little bit on this. So as you think about that, having that ability to hike, having the ability to manage your own care, that's important. What age pops into your mind that starts to become a bit of a challenge?
So it's interesting because both of my parents, I'm very fortunate, both of my parents are still living, and they are 85 and 87 years old, and they live independently, and they're, for the most part, doing pretty darn good. So my goal is that and maybe plus 5 years. Like, if I can live to 87, 88 years old independently and still feel like I have all my faculties and can do what I need to do, then I feel like I've done a good job.
Excellent. And so I put down 88. And how long do you think humans can live?
I mean, what is 103, 102? It depends. Like, just because they make it to that age, is that good?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's 110 years old, they're out there. I don't know that they know that they're there anymore. I don't know.
Jean Clement lived to 122, and she stopped smoking when her eyesight was so bad she couldn't light her cigarette.
That is amazing.
So I'm going to jot down 108.
Sure.
108. All right. What are 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts because everybody likes shortcuts, to longevity and a long health span that you would share?
So I think the first thing that I think of is preserving your muscle mass. And my answers may be totally off the wall compared to most of your guests. But to me, when I think about elderly people, what comes to mind is their frailty. And if you can maintain muscle mass throughout your mature years, and how do you do that, right? You've got to do strength training. You've got to lift weights. You can do lunges and squats and push-ups and pull-ups. Like, those are your own body weight. You don't have to have a fancy membership to a gym to do those very basic exercise. So between preserving your strength, and I'm also going to piggyback on that, on strength, preserving your muscle mass, what is also really important, in my own opinion, is preserving your flexibility. Because if you're stiff and you're sore and you can't move agility wise, if you do happen to take a fall, it's going to be a lot worse than if you have a certain level of flexibility and muscle mass on your body. So for me, muscle mass and flexibility are really important. The other thing that I think of is being aware of the level of toxicity that's in our environment. So mitigating that as much as possible, filtering your water, filtering your air, being concerned and aware of your personal care products, your makeup, your moisturizer, your shampoo, your conditioner, your hair care products, your oral care, your sunscreen, your soap, everything that comes in contact with your skin, you want it to be clean ingredients. So you just have to constantly think about that environmental toxic burden that is cumulative. We think about the bucket. We don't want the bucket overflowing. We want to be able to detox and get rid of as much as we possibly can. So being aware of the environmental toxicity, getting rid of that as much as possible. Sweating every single day is a really great way to detoxify. So if you do that through exercise, fabulous. If you want to do that in a sauna or a steam room, fabulous. Like however you want to do that, but keep sweating because you sweat out a lot of toxins. And then the other thing that I'm being very conscientious of as I mature, when I get to the age of retirement, that's not the end of what I'm doing. Like I may retire from this job, but I'm going to get another job, or I'm going to volunteer, or I'm going to keep myself mentally and physically engaged, because so many people, like, they retire and then they just kind of go to jello. They don't exercise their brain. They don't exercise their body. And then they wonder why they get sick. So I'm not doing that.
Do your parents do something along those lines?
My mother volunteers at a local hospital a few days a week. Yep. She's very active. She plays cards with her friends. She goes to lunch. Very active. Yes.
Very awesome. That's awesome. What are 1 to 2 things that people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and a long health span?
Can I go back and reuse my answer? I think the retirement thing is a really big thing. Like, just because you stop doing what your lifelong career was doesn't mean you need to you can't turn your brain off. You cannot stop utilizing your brain. And if that just means doing Sudoku or crossword puzzles, whatever it is, reading books, you've got to exercise your brain every day and exercise your body. Like, I think that a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to retire and then that's it. No, that's just one chapter that closed. There's many more chapters to be had.
Yeah, I think there's the phrase that aging is the relentless pursuit of comfort. It really does apply. All right, Kerry, how can people contact you?
We're online at www.whisper-health.com, and our social media is the same, Whisper Health Functional Medicine.
Excellent. And what in the near future are you excited about?
I'm really excited to continue speaking about this very important topic that I am incredibly passionate about. I want to just be able to really let people know that they have a choice when it comes to how they want to go about treating a chronic skin condition.
Excellent. Do you have any speaking engagements lined up for 2025 yet?
I don't. I'm working on that right now. I'm actually reaching out to a few people and hope to have a few for later this year.
Excellent. Well, you can be kept up to date. It's whisper-health.com. And then you said Whisper Health Medicine. Is that on the social media?
Whisper Health Functional Medicine.
Whisper Health Functional Medicine. Excellent. That's how you can contact her. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much. It's been so much fun. I thank you for what you do and for this podcast and really just enlightening all your listeners. It's fabulous work.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.